The sun bled into the horizon, painting the sky in hues of blood orange and bruised purple. The once vibrant colors now seemed to mock the desolation below. A chilling breeze whispered through the deserted village, carrying with it the echoes of a time when laughter and life filled the streets, rustling the leaves of the skeletal trees. These trees, once lush and green, now stood as ghostly reminders of what had been lost. Sergeant Ryker, his face camouflaged with mud and grime, felt the weight of the mission pressing down on him. He scanned the desolate landscape from his position atop a crumbling building, every shadow and movement scrutinized with a soldier's precision. His eyes, hardened by years of combat, had seen too much. They'd witnessed the horrors of war, the loss of comrades, and the destruction of innocence. Yet they held a glint of unease. This mission felt different, more dangerous, as if the very air was charged with impending doom. He gripped his rifle tighter, the cold steel a familiar comfort against the creeping fear that gnawed at his resolve. The weapon, a constant companion, was more than just a tool. It was a lifeline in the chaos of war. The mission had been simple, a routine reconnaissance behind enemy lines, but simplicity in war was often a deceptive veil. Get in, gather intel, get out, clean and silent. But something felt wrong. The village, eerily silent, reeked of a trap. The silence was not just the absence of sound. It was a presence, thick and suffocating, wrapping around them like a shroud. The hairs on the back of Ryker's neck prickled with warning. His instincts, honed by countless battles, screamed at him to be on guard. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, hunted. Every rustle, every shadow seemed to hide an unseen enemy. He signaled to his four-man squad, their faces grim under the camouflage paint. Each man knew the stakes, the dangers that lurked in the silence. Their eyes reflected his own apprehension, a shared understanding of the peril they faced. Their eyes reflected his own apprehension, the silent acknowledgement of a predator sensing danger. They were not just soldiers, they were survivors, bound by the unspoken bond of those who had seen the edge of death and lived to tell the tale. The silent acknowledgement of a predator sensing danger. The village, with its empty streets and ghostly silence, was a battlefield waiting to erupt. And they were the intruders, stepping into the unknown, ready to face whatever lay ahead. Alpha 2 to base. Do you copy? Over. Riker's voice was a low murmur, barely audible above the wind. Static crackled in response. He adjusted the frequency, hoping to get a clearer signal, but the interference only grew worse. The wind howled through the trees, carrying with it the distant sounds of conflict. He tried again, his words clipped and urgent. Alpha 2 to base. Do you copy? Over. His heart pounded in his chest as he waited for a response, the seconds stretching into what felt like an eternity. This is Alpha 2. We've got eyes on the village. The place looked deserted, eerily quiet, with no signs of life. He scanned the area meticulously, searching for any movement, any indication that they weren't alone. No signs of civilian presence. Repeat, no civilians. The village was a ghost town, buildings standing like silent sentinels watching over the empty streets. It was too quiet, too still. Something's off here, requesting immediate exfil. Over. His instinct screamed that something was wrong. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up, a primal warning that danger was near. The static continued, punctuated by unintelligible fragments of words. He could barely make out the garbled responses, frustration mounting with each failed attempt to communicate. Ryker cursed under his breath. Their comms were failing, the signal weak and unreliable this deep in enemy territory. He slammed his fist against the radio, a futile attempt to force it to work. He knew the risks of venturing this far without reliable communication. The mission had been risky from the start, but now it felt like they were walking into a trap. Every instinct screamed at him to pull out, to abandon the mission and disappear back into the shadows, but he couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, that every move was being monitored. The decision weighed heavily on him, the safety of his team hanging in the balance. Contact sniper, northwest building, flanks move! The shout echoed through the comms, a stark reminder of the danger they were in. The team had been on edge for hours, knowing that any moment could bring a deadly encounter. The sniper's position was a strategic nightmare, giving the enemy a clear line of sight over their intended escape route. Ryker barked out orders, his voice sharp and clear despite the chaos. His experience in countless battles had honed his ability to stay calm under pressure, and his team relied on that steadiness now more than ever. Each command was a lifeline, a thread of order in the midst of the storm. He returned fire, his own rifle spitting lead towards the enemy position. The recoil was familiar, almost comforting, a reminder of the countless times he had faced similar threats and survived. The enemy sniper was skilled, but Ryker's team had faced worse and come out on top. The air filled with the deafening roar of gunfire and the acrid smell of cordite. Smoke billowed around them, obscuring vision and adding to the chaos. It was a scene of utter pandemonium, but within it, Ryker's team moved with practiced precision, each member knowing their role and executing it flawlessly. His team, seasoned veterans all, reacted instantly. Years of training and countless missions had forged them into a cohesive unit capable of responding to threats with speed and efficiency. They communicated with hand signals and brief clipped words, conserving their breath for the fight. They moved with the precision and grace of predators, taking cover behind crumbling walls and shattered windows. Each piece of debris was a potential shield, each broken wall a temporary sanctuary. They knew how to use the environment to their advantage, turning the ruins into a battlefield of their own design. Another burst of static from his radio. The interference was maddening, a constant reminder of how isolated they were. Communication was their lifeline, and every garbled message was a potential death sentence. A voice, faint but clear, finally broke through the interference. It was a small victory, but in their situation, every bit of clarity was a godsend. The message was brief, but it carried the weight of their immediate future. Alpha 2, this is base. We rid you. The words were a lifeline, a connection to the outside world. But the relief was short-lived as the next message came through. We're unable to dispatch extraction at this time. Enemy presence is heavy. The cold, hard truth hit them like a punch to the gut. They had hoped for a way out, a chance to escape the tightening noose, but now they knew they were on their own. You are ordered to self-extract. The command was clear, but the implications were dire. They would have to fight their way out, relying on their wits and skills to survive. It was a daunting task, but one they had faced before. Good luck, Alpha 2, over and out. The line went dead. The silence that followed was deafening, a stark contrast to the chaos of battle. It was a moment of reckoning, a realization that they were truly alone. Ryker slammed his fist against the concrete floor, his frustration palpable. The weight of their situation bore down on him, but he couldn't afford to let it show. His team needed him to be strong, to lead them through the fire. They were on their own. The realization was a bitter pill to swallow, but it also steeled their resolve. They had faced impossible odds before and come out on top. This would be no different. Did they say good luck? The disbelief in the young soldier's voice was clear. It was a cruel twist of fate, but one they had to accept. There was no room for doubt or hesitation. Corporal Finn, the team's youngest member, muttered beside him, his voice laced with nervous tension. He was brave, but the weight of the situation was heavy on his young shoulders. Ryker knew he had to keep the kid focused. "Just our lucky day, kid," Ryker growled back, already formulating a plan in his mind. He had to keep the team together, keep them moving. The enemy was closing in, and they had to be ready for anything. They were surrounded, outnumbered, and outgunned. The odds were against them, but they had faced worse. Each member of the team knew their role, and they trusted each other implicitly. But they were still breathing, and as long as they were breathing, they had a chance. The fight wasn't over, not by a long shot. They had to regroup, reassess, and prepare for the next wave. And as long as they were breathing, they would fight their way out. The determination in their eyes was unmistakable. They were warriors, and they would not go down without a fight. The battle was far from over, and they were ready to face whatever came next.